Hey friends, how's it going? This is Enrique Lloreda from the R&B Way and Sona Sounds. I never really explain what all of this means. The R&B Way, well, it's this channel and I hope you love it. And Sona Sounds is a company that I started with some of my best friends. They're amazing musicians. And the goal is to sell sounds, loops, presets that are really usable, really unique, really interesting. We try to make stuff that really doesn't stick only to one genre, but rather is usable in a lot of different scenarios. So if you're interested in these sounds, you can go to sonasounds.com. The link is in the description, and you can check out some of our products. Enough banter for today. So I want to talk about production, R&B production, modern R&B production. I want to talk about my whole process, starting with my production template, where I like to start finding ideas, developing different sections, making an arrangement, and pretty much the whole process of creating a complete R&B, modern R&B instrumental. So if you're into that, stick around and let's get to it. Alright, so we're here in Ableton, and the first thing you'll notice probably is all these colors. I have every different kind of instrument in a group, and it has its own color. And the bus for each group has a utility plugin taking down some gain, because you know that samples tend to be pretty hot. So I just want to bring some of that down. I also clip gain the samples down when I'm producing, but this is also something I like to do because things tend to get pretty hot. So I just have a MIDI channel for my kick, snare, snare 2, hi-hat 1. Hi-hat 2 has a drum rack because sometimes I like to add different hi-hats into one track. Different hi-hats that sound pretty similar so that I can give it a more real and organic kind of vibe with different samples. It's something I tend to do a lot, so I just have that track just in case. I have an audio track for a loop and for a percussion loop. I usually tend to double and add tracks here, but this is a pretty good starting point for me. Then I have my sound effects here. They're just audio tracks. I also have the utility plugin here and just audio tracks where I can drag in different sort of risers, crashes, impacts, ambiances, all that sort of stuff. And I have a bass synth analog. It's an audio track where I can record any sort of hardware synth or even a real bass. Anyways, we also have a bass synth D digital where I can just drag in any VST. I tend to use Serum a lot, as you know, but I also use some other stuff here and there when Serum isn't really fully doing the job for me. I also have one little guitar track here because I like to start with one guitar track and then just start doubling if I need more guitars, doubling the track with the same effects, and then I'll record something new, maybe tweak some things around. But just having one track is pretty good for me. Besides the Archetype plugin that I use by Neural DSP, the Corey one, it's pretty heavy on the CPU. And even though my CPU is much better now that I'm on PC, it's still good to only start with one track and not overload it. And then I have a group for my synths here. Utility, taking down some gain, Serum with some effects to start with, and Synth 1 is an audio track in case I want to record some hardware synths. So that's my template. I really recommend being organized with your template because it feels more like a temple to me, even though it sounds kind of cheesy or stupid. Because I open this up and I know exactly where to go. I know where my drums are. I know that I just need to find a sample, drag it in, and everything is neat, labeled, colored, perfect, ready to go. So, templates. So enough about templates. Let's get to RnB, modern RnB. I like to start with some sort of rhythm, you know, because I like to drag in some sort of loop, some sort of rhythmic stuff that's going to be a decent guide that I can then replace or build on top of. And that way I can play some keys or some guitar and really dig into a vibe. My favorite sounds for rhythmic sort of stuff, loops to start with, are the sounds that we make. I know it sounds like I'm just trying to promote my product, but we honestly have some pretty cool loops to start with. I'm just gonna drag in a loop from our free pack from the Live Drums Lite. These are drum grooves, live drum grooves that I processed through hardware synths, moving the filter and the drive and all that cool stuff. So I got some pretty cool textures. Just gonna drag it in, set the tempo to 90 because it's a 90 BPM loop. Even though in Ableton we can change the tempo pretty easily and it doesn't affect the audio that much. That's something I love about Ableton. So this is one of the loops I found. It's pretty cool. It's like nice and dark, but has some good rhythm, some good analog texture. I'm just gonna bring the tempo down a bit. It feels a little too fast right now. and that's always a good starting point. Tempo, mess around with it, find something that feels like what you're going for. Sometimes it's a little slower, sometimes it's a little more upbeat. Really depends on the mood that you're going for. Right now, because of this loop, since it's kind of dark and mysterious and rhythmic, I maybe want to make it a little slower. Let's try 80. Maybe like 82. Feels pretty cool. I think I can play something tasty on guitar or keys on top of this. Let's go for keys because my guitar is all the way over there. It's just like 2 meters away, but my keys are right here. I want to play some keys. So Serum, let's go to some of our presets. These are really cool. The Cleaner Roads is a nice electric piano. This one's pretty cool. I'm gonna make it a little darker. And with a little more attack to make it feel more like a pad. Less decay, more sustain, more like a pad kind of texture. And I didn't go for a pad because I wanted sort of an electric piano kind of sound for this. Just felt like it would suit the sound of the drums really nicely. And even if I told you that I might switch the drums later, I usually end up using the initial loop that I found, building around that, because these loops aren't bad, honestly. It's not like using Logic loops that usually sound pretty thin. These have a little more texture and vibe, so I usually just leave them in the production. Yeah, that's a nice sound. So I'm just gonna loop this and play some chords. Yeah, that's tasty. Jazzy chords. We'll have another tutorial on chords for R&B, neo soul, that kind of stuff, because it's a really interesting topic. It's really based on jazz harmony. So yeah, if you're interested in that, definitely let us know. I'm just gonna quantize this because it's a pad. It doesn't really need to be that imperfect. And it has a little too much release at the end of the chord. Yeah. That's better. I'm gonna make this one a little longer. I always recommend messing around with the MIDI, getting it right, because it's important. That's why you can tweak it this much. This one's a little too long, maybe. Hear it again. Maybe let's try to connect this one a little more. Perfect. That's feeling good. And since the loop is a little longer, I can just go ahead and copy this. And because I can, I'm just going to tweak some chords around, see if I can find some different chords that also kind of suit this vibe. So let's start with the same chord, G minor 7, minor 9. Ooh, it would be really tasty if we use the modal interchange chord here. This is a more kind of advanced jazz harmony concept, but it's really cool. It's basically borrowing chords from other modes of the same tonic. So if we are in C major, for example, instead of using chords from C major all the time, it means using some chords from C minor, for example, or C Dorian, or C Phrygian, or that kind of concept. So let's see how this sounds. Wow, this D is really feeling ugly. Can't believe I just said that. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Just one chord that's different, but very different, but also kind of serves the same function. We're going from G minor 9, it's the 2 chord in F major, which is our tonic here. And instead of using our dominant chord here, C7, the 5 chord, we're using the flat 2. F is the 1, G is the 2. We're using the flat 2, G flat, or the sharp 1, whatever you want to call it. And it's major 7, so it feels really open, really kind of modern R&B, you know that kind of sound, like Robert Glasper kind of chord. So I'm happy with the chords. Let's add some processing. I have these processors already here because I know they pretty much always work. They're always pretty vibey. Let's see how RC20 sounds on this. Bring the gain down a little so it has some headroom to breathe. Wobble and flutter to make it more uneasy. Softer distortion. Less reverb. Let's check out the chorus. It's a little too much. Less width. Make it a little more mono. Really vibey. Then I have this EQ here so that I can filter out stuff. It's really useful to have an EQ already going. Maybe even enhance some frequencies. A little more of these mids right here. I'm gonna open up the filter a little bit. It takes a lot of tweaking to get the sound you're imagining, but that's really cool. I'm loving that sound. Now that we have some chords, we can go ahead and make some more interesting drums around this loop. I'm just gonna look for some good samples that could suit this vibe. I have some Splice samples here that I use quite a lot. Splice has some really cool stuff for R&B, alternative R&B, neo soul. This one's really cool. I'm just gonna drag it here into my track. And now I can play it. Perfect. I'm just going to shorten this a little and add a bit of a fade out. I'm just going to go to one shot instead of classic. One shot just plays the whole sample. Classic plays it for as long as you play the note. So if you play it for a really short time period, it may not even play the whole sample. So one shot, and I'm going to edit it right here. Add a bit more of a fade out to make it a little shorter and cleaner. Yeah, that's cool. I'm gonna bring the volume down here because, as I told you, samples tend to be pretty hot. And if we're gonna use an analog sort of compressor on this kick, we need a healthy amount of gain that's not too hot. I'm gonna look for a snare that could match this kick before I even record the kick, because the type of sounds that you choose really informs what you're gonna play. So I like to choose the sounds first and then find a pattern that suits those sounds well. So I found a snare that could be really nice for a snare 2. It's like a really long snare with a ton of reverb. Could be cool for a transition or something. One shot, bring the volume down a little. Perfect. Now our main snare. This one's pretty cool. It's sort of trappy, but also kind of dirty, not super bright. I think this would suit like a darker sort of R&B really nicely. One shot, I'm gonna make it shorter. Yeah, that's perfect. See how by making it shorter, I removed the sort of click it had? Like that sort of dirt it has at the end. You can play around with a fade out and get it exactly the way you want it. Perfect. Bring the volume down a couple dB. 4, 5, 6 dB is a safe bet. Perfect. Now, knowing the type of sounds we have, I'm probably going to start with a snare, just as a simple backbeat. That's usually a safe place to start. And then you can start moving the snare around, creating different sort of bounces and all that stuff. When it's something as simple as a snare, just hitting the backbeat, I don't mind just drawing it in, maybe tweaking around the velocities, and yeah. Pretty cool snare. Let's play around with the kick. Since it's a darker, slower kind of vibe, I think I'll try to leave some more space and every now and then do something that's a little fast, just to give it a little bad guy attitude. Quantize this to the 16th note because I have some fast stuff in there. Yeah, that's pretty good. I might go back to it and tweak it a little, as I told you, but I think it's a good starting point. I'm not fully in love with this kick, so I think now would be a good time to change the sample. If it's not feeling right, don't try to process it a ton. Find something that would suit the song better. Much better. Now would be a good time to look for a hi-hat. And here you have a couple choices. You can go for a sort of synthetic hi-hat, like a pop, trap sort of hi-hat, modern R&B sort of hat. You can go for something that's a little more live also. Alternative R&B, neo soul does this a lot, where the hi-hats are a little more organic and maybe with some dirt to them. And it sounds really cool. And you can also go for an alternative and weird sort of hat, maybe like a shaker with a ton of effects or something like that. Really depends on what you're going for. I'm going to try something more synthetic here because it does have sort of a dark, slow, trappy R&B kind of vibe, and we'll see what we can do. This one can be pretty cool. It's between like organic and synthetic. One shot, let's make it a bit shorter maybe. And if we play it a little higher on the keyboard, this can be pretty cool. That's not too bad. I'm gonna lay that down. We can quantize this one pretty hard because now that I played this, it definitely sounds pretty stale, pretty boring, but I think this is a good like main hat laying down the main rhythm, and we can add some hats around that. Maybe some hats that are a bit shorter and brighter. Could be pretty cool to have some hi-hats playing around. Bring the velocity down a bit so it's nice and subtle. Even though it's simple, it sounds pretty nice already. If I take out the loop, yeah, now it feels empty. The loop definitely helps glue everything together. It's always good to play around with the volume. Volume is one of our most important tools, often overlooked. Since this is feeling pretty cool already, I'm gonna try to tweak the loop a bit with EQ first of all. Cut out the subs, but leave some of that low end, like around 150, 200, because that's where a lot of the warmth I think is coming from. Definitely. And we can give it a bit more mids to make it a little more present. filter out the very high end. That's pretty nice. Let's try something. I'm gonna bring the pitch of this audio track up a little bit. That's pretty cool. I'm feeling we can even make it slower, a little slower. Wouldn't hurt. I'm gonna make this a little higher. I'm thinking making it more like a top layer with some reverb. Yeah, that's nice. A reverb. I'm gonna go for Verb Suite here because it has some really, really clean and beautiful samples. I love the BM7. Beautiful. Plates are really nice, bright plate. Make it a little shorter maybe. Too much. A little chorus wouldn't hurt. Bring down the low end a little. Boost the highs a little. That's more R&B vibes. I'm gonna try kickstart on this. Make it sidechain a little. Definitely helps. I'm gonna try something that could be weird, but could also be pretty cool. I'm gonna try a real hi-hat loop on top of this. The hi-hat loops are in our paid pack, Live Drums Volume 1. You can go to loops, hi-hat loops, and this is closer to 90 BPM. Let's see what we can get. That's pretty cool. It's not that bad. I'm gonna try. First, I'm gonna label this hi-hat real. Bring it here. And I think one of those hi-hats has to go to the sides. I'm gonna try sending the synthetic one to the sides. Maybe even make it shorter. Bring the pitch up a bit. Yeah. Doubler for the save. Volume solves everything. Get a nice balance. And I'm gonna make these a little brighter with EQ. And I might try some delay on this to give it a little more rhythm. That could be cool. H delay is usually pretty great. Pretty much always does a great job of giving you a vibe. A really slow feedback so that it only repeats once or a couple times. And the modulation is really cool. You can add a lot of movement in the pitch. Now we're talking. Yeah. I'm gonna EQ the real hi-hat a little, get it sitting right in the mix. Take all those lows away, we don't really need those. Make a pretty abrupt cut, right around 300, 400 maybe. Let's give it more of these mids that aren't too harsh, like around 2K. Alright, I'm really digging this. Let's add some more keys, synths, or a bass. Cool, so we have a pretty good foundation going on. And by the way, I got the pop filter. Sorry about all those P's. I was just listening to the video back, and yeah, those were pretty harsh, so so sorry about that. We have a really vibey foundation. A really good singer could already write over this, but I feel like it's still lacking some sort of distinctive element. I'm thinking something like a keyboard riff, a guitar part maybe, some sort of Juno arpeggiator maybe. I'm gonna try some keys and see if I can play something tasteful, and we'll take it from there. When coming up with melodies, it's really important that the notes you play match the chord in some way. It could either be a chord tone, like one of the main notes of the chord. If it's a C major, for example, C, E, and G, or even B as the seventh. And then anything you add besides those notes would be tensions. So some tensions are nice, others are a little more tense, as the name says, but just kind of play by ear and find notes that really suit the chords in a musical way. So I played a little melody. It has a lot of stuff that's not great, but that's why we have MIDI editors. I'm just gonna edit it a bit and I'll show you what I did. I just went note by note, moving it around until it fit right with the groove, sometimes a little later, sometimes a little before, because melodies are really sensitive things. If it's too quantized, it's really gonna sound quantized. I think it's nice to have a little bit of a loose feel with the melody. So I also found some notes that work over the chords, especially over the modal interchange chord, and this is how it sounds. Pretty simple melody. Some of you may not like it. I think it works all right. It would really be up to the singer at this point if they want it or not for me. But I'm just gonna try and make it fit because I think it's a pretty cool melody. It emphasizes some nice notes in each chord. So I'm just gonna add some cool stuff and see what we get. Delay would be really nice. I'm gonna put it before the reverb. make it dual and probably use something that's straight, like 16ths and 8ths. Could be cool. Filter this, add some drive, and I don't know about you, but I'm digging this. I think it sounds really nice with the delay, the filtering, the reverb. It has its place in the mix, and I think a singer would appreciate having a counter melody to whatever they're singing. So now that we have a pretty cool melodic idea going on and a really strong foundation, I think it's time to add a bass that has some attitude. Yeah. I'm gonna drag Serum into my MIDI bass track, go to our new presets, bass, and check out what we got. I think we can make something really cool with this. Big bass. I'm gonna bring that down quite a lot. This one's not bad. It's a little too distorted. Maybe if I bring the distortion down a bit. Bring the cutoff down a bit as well. Yeah. Let's check out the matrix because we have some sort of pitch bend going on here. I want it to be a little more subtle because it gives it too much of a kick kind of sound. I'm gonna try playing something. I really liked playing the long notes over that because since it's a really deep bass, those long notes just add a lot of character and energy to every chord. So I played some long notes there and also some little riffs and octaves. I'm gonna quantize it and see what we got. Always changing stuff, making it fit better. And that ending is really cool because it has a lot of octaves going on. It really feels like it's going somewhere. And if you're wondering about the second note of the bass, I told you it was a C7 chord, but I'm playing F sharp as my bass. It's a tritone away from C. It's really far away. But since C7 is a dominant chord in this case, I thought the F sharp would be a really nice note to play because it's a tritone away. We can use the tritone substitution, really common thing in jazz harmony. And if I use the C on this, I would have to play a high C, and I think it would take away a lot of depth. It just sounds weird, really weird. If we bring it to F sharp, deep, you can't really tell what note it is, but it suits the chord in a sort of tense and mysterious way. Really, really cool. Bass lines, definitely be aware of the notes you're playing and how they can interact with the chord. It doesn't always have to be the root. All right, so this bass is feeling really cool. I'm just gonna process it a little, make it a little more interesting, a little more vibey. I'm gonna cut off all those subs that I can't really tell what they are, like around 10 hertz. Because 20 to 30 can be important in the sound, but 10 is just rumble, really. EQ so that we can then bring them up with something like a tape or an analog EQ. Cut out the really high end just in case. I'm gonna compress it. And I love this compressor for basses, guitars, anything that needs to be really tight with a good amount of harmonics that are going to make it stand out in the mix, be nice and pokey. Even snares and kicks are really, really nice with this compressor. I'm going to compress a good amount. And with this like 2-knob interface, except for these, I mean, you can get the level good, and then shape your transient a little more. A faster attack on this compressor actually means a slower one, and this would be a fast release. Letting some of that transient through, I'm going to compress it a little more, driving the input. That's cool. Notice how I added all of these effects while listening to the whole song. I didn't go to solo. I sometimes go to solo when I want to work on something very specific for that sound and really quickly, but you gotta be listening to stuff in context. This bass is sounding really cool, and I literally just mixed it listening to everything. I'm gonna take off the processing and we can compare. Definitely a little more upfront, a little fuller. The raw sound is actually pretty nice. It's nice and deep, but when we add everything, it just kind of extends the bass, makes it feel fuller, and really makes it feel like it's part of the song. Now that we have a cool 8-bar loop going, comes the real important part, arranging. So it's interesting to think about sections when we're arranging. This definitely feels like a chorus to me. It's vibey, it's big. I think a verse could be something without the lead and maybe with more simple drums, or the chorus can be this with a little extra layers. But for now, I'm gonna treat this as the chorus. So I'm just gonna zoom out a little, and I'm gonna bring this a little later in the song. Probably around here, maybe. And then I'm just gonna copy this over here. This can be our verse sort of thing. And we can have an intro. I'm moving all the stuff like this, not because it's gonna stay like that per se, but because I like to see where things are. Then I'll go ahead and start naming the sections. So intro, I think every song should have either a good intro or a really strong beginning going into a verse or a chorus or something. But the beginning is super important. I want to do an intro for this, even if it's a short one. Then verse, here we can call it verse 1. And we can call this chorus 1. The chorus might come in a little later or something, but we'll figure that out. And I'm going to take the lead away from the verse. And this already looks like it's starting to get a bit of structure. I like going between verse and chorus and imagining how different I want them to be and what differences I want them to have. So I'm just going to listen to the end of the verse going into the chorus and just gather my thoughts about what I think would be cool to differentiate those. So my first thought is that the chorus should definitely have a little more hi-hat action, a little more rhythm going on, maybe even some extra shakers or something. And the verse could not have the hi-hats that are on the sides. It could just have the real hi-hat. pretty cool. And then it goes into the chorus. It already feels a little more energetic. Second thing I like to do is bass lines. Bass lines are very unique, and I want this to be the chorus bass line because it's really deep, has a lot of action, and it's really cool. I'm gonna listen to the verse without a bass and imagine what I could come up with. First thing I imagine while listening to the low end is that the kick is a little too active for my taste. I think this is a cool pattern for a chorus, but I'm gonna see how I can trim this for the verse. Maybe delete this. Maybe even delete these, keep it nice and simple. Then go to this one. Delete these as well. And on this one we can have the That's good. That's good. It feels a little more open, more spacey. I think I'll go for something shorter so that the chorus feels nice and full when the bass is playing those long notes. Quantize these. That's a pretty cool pattern. I can live with that. And I think I'll leave this ending without a bass so that it feels a little emptier before the chorus hits. And I'll take these extra kicks away. Just have the one beat with a kick, and that should be pretty good. Arranging. Always about finding space, deleting stuff. That's one thing I love about Ableton. You can just go ahead and select stuff, press 0 and deactivate it, or just delete it, copy it, paste it somewhere else. That's pretty much what arrangement is nowadays in production. There's definitely more to it. Musicality, things like changing the bass line, for example, doing something different. But in production terms, it really comes down to changing things, adding new tracks, copying, pasting, you know the drill. Thinking about the intro, I think it would be cool to just have the drum loop, our initial drum loop, but in a different track. I just duplicated it and left it here. And I'm gonna filter it really nice so that it's nice and dark, and maybe even open up that filter as the intro starts going. And I think I'll do the same for the pad. I'm just gonna duplicate it and make a unique sort of texture for the intro. That's pretty cool. It hits pretty hard, and we don't really have a lot of stuff here. I think that's what arranging really comes down to. It's using like your fundamental elements and really carefully choosing where they're gonna be. That way you don't always have to add a lot of stuff to compensate for bad arranging. So right here I just use literally the same sounds, but I just tweak them a bit in a new track, and when sections change, they feel different. That's pretty much the most important thing as the song is progressing. I think after a chorus we can have a little breather, because we've had a lot of like the hi-hat stuff going on. Maybe a little break, something that's very similar to the intro, but maybe with a little more stuff. So I'm just gonna copy the intro stuff. We can recycle it. You can always recycle stuff. Since it's later in the song, it's anyways gonna feel a little different, so that's good. Then I can maybe add a snare here or something to make it feel a little different. You maybe repeat the lead part here, maybe have it as an instrumental section. And you guessed it, I'm gonna duplicate it and filter it a bit. I could always automate a filter, but I just want to have a new track for it, a different thing where I can just process it very differently if I wanted to. Here I'm just gonna filter it maybe. We can add more delay. That's a cool section. I like that. You can call it a break, and it can be followed by a verse 2. Just gonna copy the verse and then see what kind of stuff we can change. I'm still playing around with the original stuff I recorded, still haven't added anything new. It's all up to your workflow really, but I like to do it this way when I'm really thinking about making a full beat. It just helps me stay on task, move quickly, and make important decisions at the beginning of the process. And after that, I can add all the bells and whistles I want. For this verse, to make it a little different, we can maybe use the filtered pad that we used for the break and for the intro. It sounds a little more hidden, intense, and we can maybe layer that with an octave or something. That could be really interesting. I'm just gonna use literally the same thing, but in the MIDI, I'm gonna bring the octave up. Just Command A, Shift, up. Bring the volume down. Here's how the first verse sounds. Different. Noticeable differences. And I think I'm gonna change the bass line for this verse as well. I'll just open up the MIDI and tweak it around a bit. Maybe just one hit. That's pretty cool. And then have it come into the 2-hit thing. Let's check that out again. I might make these notes a little longer so that they have a little more attitude and impact. And I think I'll just use the normal note here. Yeah, just a single note, nice and long, nice and cool. Gonna make this one hit with a kick. Make it nice and long. Now we're moving, a little more action in the bass. And then we can bring the chorus back in. But it wouldn't be a good second chorus if we didn't change some things. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring these octaves here again because they're really cool. And for the lead, I'm gonna double it as well. make a layer. I'm gonna play it in a lower octave, shift down. Gonna open up the patch, see what we got. That's pretty nice. It's a nice layer filling the mid-range with that melody, and we can always boost those mids a little, give it a little more character. And here's how the first chorus sounds in comparison. Back to the second one. And since we're doubling stuff, I'm just getting excited with this, so I'm gonna double the bass as well. Fuck it. Make it nice and thick. But I'm not just gonna double it. I'm gonna take the MIDI up an octave so it's not battling with that really low end. I'm gonna open up the patch and find something different. A bit of a wider bass would be pretty cool for the second chorus. Tweak it around a bit. Take the sub away. Let's see how it sounds with the other bass and with the drums. I'm gonna find another wave, more like a Juno. Here's how the first chorus sounds. Second chorus. It sounds very, very similar, but fuller. Now to make it a little more different, rhythmically or just with our arrangement or choices of instruments, we can change the hi-hats a bit. We can maybe add a shaker or a different loop or something, just to vary it a little. Something that I just noticed that would be really, really important to do is to have more snares. You remember that snare that we chose at the beginning? That was a bit of a longer snare. I think we can use that for some sections now. The chorus or some of our transitions would be really cool for that. So I'm just gonna copy one of my snares and paste it wherever I think it will be cool. Maybe at the end of the phrases in the chorus. And since the pitch is a little low on this, I'm just going to bring it up to make it a little more apparent in the mix. Yeah, that's cool. I think I'll use that for every second hit in the chorus. Let's see how that sounds. That's cool. Feels nice and R&B-ish. Reverb is always friendly for R&B. I think I'm gonna use the snare maybe for the break as well. That could be cool. really digging this. It's sounding really cool. And I'm thinking, let's check out the hi-hats for this last chorus. That one's good. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. Let's check out the other ones. I want to make them different. So I'm just going to duplicate them. That's the drill. For me, anytime you want to make it different, just duplicate it and do something different. So let's check them out. I definitely want a bit more distortion, saturation to make them stand out a little more. I'll use the Ableton one. It's nice and aggressive. I think I'll bring the pitch up. Without the lo-fi, we get a nice and even hi-hat sound. That could be pretty cool. Compared to the first chorus, it's a little more tucked in. That's great. That's really great. And finally, I'm gonna find a clap sample that I can use in the choruses to make them stand out a little more. So I'm just gonna duplicate the snare. I'm only gonna leave the MIDI in the chorus sections. And I'll look for a sample. I found a sample that's not a clap. It's more like a perk, but it sounds really nice. I think it can be pretty cool on this. Gives it sort of a clap feel because it has not one but a couple hits, and I think if we add something like a room reverb, it can be pretty cool. Yeah. I like that. It's cool. Now let's just do an outro. We're around the 2-minute mark. We could end it here. We could keep on going. For the sake of this video, I'm just gonna end it here. It's already been a pretty long video to record, so I'm just gonna put it here and we'll go over some final details and sound effects to enhance our beat. Alright, so after listening to the beat a couple times, I'm feeling pretty confident about it. I think it's sounding really good. It's flowing well. It's simple, it's definitely simple, but I think an artist can definitely get on this and sing some lines, start writing some stuff. And usually, once the artist has their lyrics and records their vocals and sends them to you, the producer, you take their vocals, edit, start adding vocal layers, different low vocals, high vocals, doubles, all that stuff, and the production starts feeling fuller. And if you feel like it's lacking some stuff at that point, when you have your vocals sort of sitting in nicely, you can still add some stuff, some more synth layers, drum parts, anything you feel like it needs, more transitions, sound effects. But I think starting with something like this, where it's simple, it's vibey, there's a clear idea, the sections are well defined, I think this is a great blueprint for any artist who wants to sing over a beat. So the final touch I want to add is some sound effects, transitions, so that the artist really feels the transitions and can really get into the vibe that I'm going for. I think this one can be pretty cool if we tweak it around a little. With sound effects, it's not uncommon to have very low decibel levels, because you don't really, or I mean, it really depends, but I usually don't really like them to poke out that much of the speakers. I like them to be tucked in and just something that's a little more in the background, leading the way for the song. So I'm thinking definitely some reverb for this would be great. Let's see what it sounds like with this. A little longer decay could be good. A little more width. I'm gonna look for a longer reverb in the BM7s. I love those. One of the halls maybe. Yeah, a nice hall. Let's EQ it a bit, give it a little more high end. That could be interesting. It's not bad. And finally, I'm just gonna EQ it a little, cut out that low end that we don't need. And I'm gonna use this for the other chorus as well. And maybe even for the outro, just like as a final goodbye to the song. Maybe if we bring the gain down quite a lot here in the clip. And we can also mess around with the pitch. Not great. Up. That's not too bad. And I also want to have some sort of riser before the chorus. Something that's short, not really like an electronic EDM sort of riser. That's like... Nah, just like a short reversed crash will do the job. I'm gonna go to the Sona Live Drums, Volume 1, the full pack. Because we have some cool crashes here and some cymbal swells as well. That could be pretty useful for this. And I'm just gonna bring in a cymbal swell for the end of the chorus to go into the break. That could be a cool transition. That works. I'm happy with that. And we can also use this swell in some other section. Could be useful. Maybe for the second chorus as well. And one thing I want to do is I'm going to duplicate the crash track and I'm going to freeze it and bounce it in place so that I can reverse some of them. Since they have some reverb, I think they would make some really, really nice reversed crashes. Yep, that's perfect. So I'm just going to cut these a bit like around here maybe and just press R. It reverses the track. Let's see how this sounds. They sound very similar, obviously. They're the same sound. I'm just gonna tweak them a bit. I'm gonna bring the pitch down a little so that at the end it finally reaches the high pitch. That's really nice. That's really nice. I'm digging that. I'm just gonna use the same one for the second verse going to the chorus, and we can use this little one right here for the end. It can be like a small kind of riser going to the outro. So same deal, just reverse it, move it around until it's right where you want it. Something like that. Just make sure everything is aligning pretty well. That should be good. Let's check that out. And finally, I could just maybe repeat this key part again for the outro without the loop. Maybe just add another swell right here at the end. that's a pretty good ending. Like I said, it's a pretty simple beat. I would probably tweak this more once the artists send me their stuff, but I'm really happy with this. This beat is sounding really great. Last thing I want to do is touch up the mix bus a little bit to make it sound like it's a little more mastered, a little more finished, so that when I send it to an artist, if I was going to send this to an artist, they would hear something that's sounding really, really close to something that's final. So I'm just going to loop the hardest section in the song, the second chorus, open up my master, and let's check it out. This area, not too nice. We can bring that down a bit. A little bit. Compress it a bit with this SSL style compressor. Slower attack so that we have more transient coming through and a faster release. A slow attack and a fast release usually make for a pretty punchy sound depending on the times that you choose and the compression amount. When you fine tune it, you can really find nice punch. Usually after compression, I like to add saturators, some sort of saturator, and virtual tape machines by Slate usually works on the master bus, at least for a demo. It just gives you like more apparent thickness and size to the music. Check this out. That's already sounding really full. And last thing I want to use is some sort of analog EQ just to color it a little. Something like a mag EQ is really nice after the tape machine, so that we can just finalize it a little bit, just like sculpt it a little bit. I'm gonna give it a bit of air, like around 20K. Even though you can't really hear that, it just kind of opens that range up a little bit. Taking down 650, that's usually like a pretty honky and muddy frequency, and it cleaned it up a good bit, so that's good. Gonna control that sub a little, bring it down, and more 100 hertz punch. That's really good. I'm just gonna take these off so that you can compare. There's obviously a volume difference. It's not a fair comparison, but I just did that after the compressor so that I would start getting a bit more gain before my limiter, and I can crank my limiter just a bit so that it sounds a bit mastered when I send it to an artist. Now that it's pretty close to zero, if I take off the limiter, this is the loudest section of my song, and it's not hitting zero, so that's a good sign. I'm just gonna bring the gain down a little bit here anytime I have the chance, just 1 dB, so that we're in a safe area. And I'm gonna turn on my limiter, just crank it a little bit. notice how the release does affect the punch. When it's a faster release, it's a little more punchy because it's letting go of that compressor faster, enhancing the punch. The L1 also has the shaping feature, which is really cool. Gives you a bit more transient. You just kind of feel a bit more transient. And it has these options. The analog is usually my go-to. And this already sounds like a mastered finished beat that could go onto BeatStars or YouTube or pretty much anywhere. I did a little final tweak to the beat in the hi-hat loop. There were some sections that were having like a bit of an open hat that felt a little harsh to the ear. You probably noticed it. So I just took the soft part and used that in repeat for the verses. Then for the choruses, half of the chorus has that soft part and half of it has the harsh part, so that it's a little more energetic and driving. That's pretty much the only tweak that I just did. Same here, the soft hi-hat, and that's it. I'm gonna play the whole beat and you can tell me how you like it.